Sidewalks that literally guide blind pedestrians through musical cues. Train stations where 200,000 people move through every day without a single collision. Crosswalks designed so perfectly that rush hour feels like a choreographed dance. Japan didn't just make walking from point A to point B functional. They turned pedestrian flow into an art form so elegant, so thoughtful that once you experience it, going back to the chaos of anywhere else feels like punishment. Here are 15 ways Japan solved pedestrian movement so obviously brilliant, you'll wonder why the entire world hasn't copied them yet. Number 1. Tactile paving blocks that speak in textures. You've probably seen those yellow textured tiles on sidewalks in photos of Japan, but what you haven't experienced is how they form an entire navigation language under your feet. The raised dots called tenji blocks tell you to stop because you're approaching stairs, a platform edge, or a street crossing. The long raised bars called guiding blocks create pathways that tell you which direction to walk. These aren't randomly placed. They form complete routes from train station entrances to ticket gates to platforms to exits. Someone who is blind can navigate Tokyo's most complex stations entirely through their feet, following these tactile sentences that run for hundreds of meters underground. The blocks are color-coded yellow not for aesthetics, but because that specific shade has the highest contrast visibility for people with partial vision. The spacing between dots is standardized at exactly 2.5 centimeters. The bar widths are 4 millimeters, raised 5 millimeters high. Every measurement was tested for maximum feedback through shoe soles and cane tips. You walk through Shinjuku Station, and beneath the chaos of 3.6 million daily passengers, there's this silent language guiding people through texture alone. Meanwhile, most countries slap down a few bumpy tiles at crosswalks and call it accessibility. Japan built an entire communication system you read with your feet. It says something about a culture when they engineer infrastructure that most people will never consciously notice, but that quietly transforms independence for millions who rely on it. Number 2. Painted footprints that tell you exactly where to stand. At busy train platforms across Japan, you'll see footprint outlines painted on the ground, positioned precisely where doors will open when trains arrive. Not approximate zones, exact spots. 2 rows of footprints, one on each side of where the door will be, creating a natural queue system. When a train pulls in, the doors align perfectly with the gaps between footprint rows. People standing on the footprints form orderly lines. People exiting have a clear center path. The whole exchange, people getting off and people getting on, happens in seconds without anyone blocking anyone else. The footprints are placed based on train models, door configurations, and stopping precision that's calibrated to within 10 centimeters. Different colored footprints indicate different train types. During rush hour at major stations like Tokyo or Osaka, thousands of people execute this dance flawlessly, every single train, because the system tells their bodies exactly where to be. In most other countries, platform crowds are formless blobs that surge toward wherever they think doors might open, blocking exits and creating bottleneck chaos every single time. Japan just painted feet on the ground. Simple, obvious, universally effective, and it works because the trains are so punctual and precise that the footprints are always in the right spot, which creates a feedback loop of trust. People believe the system because the system never lies to them. Number 3. Pedestrian scramble crossings that give everyone their moment. The Shibuya Scramble is famous, but the concept exists at hundreds of intersections across Japan. Instead of crossing in turns while dodging right-turning cars, all vehicle traffic stops completely. Every pedestrian light turns green simultaneously. People cross in all directions, including diagonally. For 30 to 40 seconds, the entire intersection belongs to people on foot. You can walk straight, cut diagonal, or even stop in the middle to take a photo, and there's zero conflict because no cars are moving anywhere. The timing is coordinated with surrounding intersections so that vehicle flow isn't destroyed, just reorganized. Scrambles are installed at intersections where pedestrian volume is so high that traditional phased crossings create dangerous crowding on corner sidewalks. By releasing everyone at once, the system prevents bottlenecks and actually improves overall traffic efficiency because cars aren't stuck waiting for endless waves of pedestrians trickling across in phases. Most cities force pedestrians to cross in narrow windows, wait through multiple light cycles, and gamble with cars that are trying to turn through crosswalks. Japan just said, stop everything, let people walk, then let cars go. The result is safer, faster, and infinitely less stressful. It requires nothing more than signal timing and the willingness to prioritize people over car convenience for 40 seconds per cycle. Number 4. Colored LED strips embedded in the ground at crosswalks. In Kyoto and other cities, you'll see LED light strips embedded directly into the pavement at pedestrian crossings. These strips change color in sync with traffic lights. Red strip means don't walk. Green strip means walk. The lights are positioned at foot level, which means you see them even if you're looking down at your phone or distracted. For elderly people or anyone with limited neck mobility, these ground lights eliminate the need to look up at overhead signals. The LEDs are bright enough to see in direct sunlight and are angled so they're visible from several meters away, giving approaching pedestrians advance notice of signal status. Some versions pulse or animate in the direction of safe crossing, creating intuitive movement cues. The installation is weatherproof and requires almost no maintenance because lead lifespan in these systems exceeds 10 years. In other countries, if you're not looking up at the exact moment the signal changes, you miss it. Japan put the information at eye level for people whose eyes are already aimed at the ground. It's a tiny intervention with massive impact for accessibility and safety. It's the kind of solution that could be retrofitted almost anywhere for relatively low cost, but somehow hasn't been because most places don't design infrastructure with distraction or disability as default assumptions. Number 5. Separate bike lanes that are actually separated. Japanese cities don't just paint a bike symbol on the road and call it a bike lane. Protected bike paths are physically separated from car traffic by raised curbs, planters, or bollards. In dense urban areas, bike lanes often run on slightly elevated sections of sidewalk, separated from pedestrian space by color-coded pavement, tactile paving, or low barriers. The separation is clear enough that pedestrians don't wander into bike lanes and cyclists don't drift into walking paths. At intersections, bike lanes have their own signal phases and clearly marked waiting zones that prevent conflicts with turning vehicles. This infrastructure exists not just in new developments but retrofitted into centuries-old neighborhoods where street width is extremely limited. The design priority is always clear. Pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles each get dedicated space, and none of those spaces overlap. Most countries paint a bike lane on the side of a car lane and wonder why nobody uses it. Japan built actual physical separation in created cities, where cycling is a legitimate transportation option for children, elderly people, and anyone who doesn't want to gamble with traffic. The result is millions of daily bike trips that never require a helmet or a death wish, because the infrastructure removes the danger instead of expecting cyclists to just be careful. If you're enjoying this and you want to see more things Japan has figured out that the rest of the world is somehow still ignoring, go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps the channel massively. And if you don't want to miss the rest of this list, stick around because what's coming next might be the smartest idea on here. Number 6. Train station platform barriers that make falling onto tracks physically impossible. At nearly every major train station in Japan, floor-to-ceiling or waist-height glass barriers run along the entire platform edge. Doors in these barriers align exactly with train doors. When a train stops, both sets of doors open simultaneously. When the train leaves, the platform doors close, creating a solid barrier between people and the tracks. These barriers, called platform screen doors, eliminate accidental falls, reduce suicides, prevent people from being pushed onto tracks during rush hour, and stop trash and belongings from falling onto the rails. They also allow for more efficient climate control in underground stations because the platform environment is sealed from the tunnel. Installation requires millimeter-perfect alignment between train door positions and platform door positions, which Japan achieves through train stopping precision aided by automatic train operation systems. Even on above-ground rural lines, you'll find simpler half-height barriers or sensor-triggered rope barriers that serve the same protective function. The rest of the world just has open platform edges and hopes nobody falls. Japan made it physically impossible. It's one of those solutions that seems extreme until you realize how many deaths and injuries and service delays it prevents. Then it seems like the only sane option. Some cities have started installing these, but the adoption rate is bafflingly slow given that the technology is decades old and the safety benefit is absolute. Number 7. Auditory signals at crosswalks that create a soundscape of safety. At pedestrian crossings across Japan, you'll hear distinct melodies or rhythmic sounds that indicate when it's safe to cross. These aren't just beeps. Many intersections use actual musical phrases, often a cuckoo bird melody in one direction and a different chirping pattern in the perpendicular direction. The two-melody system helps blind pedestrians identify which crossing has turned green, especially at complex intersections where multiple crosswalks meet. The volume adjusts based on ambient noise, getting louder during the day when traffic is heavy and quieter at night to avoid disturbing residents. Some systems use rotational speakers that aim sound directly down the crosswalk path, minimizing noise pollution while maximizing clarity for people who need the signal. The melodies are standardized across cities so that once you learn the system, it works everywhere you go in the country. Other countries use harsh beeping that all sounds the same, or nothing at all. Japan turned crosswalk signals into an auditory navigation system that's pleasant, informative, and considerate of both users and neighbors. Its infrastructure designed with the assumption that not everyone experiences the world visually, which is a baseline design philosophy that somehow still feels revolutionary. Number 8. Elevated pedestrian networks that eliminate the need to cross streets. In cities like Osaka and Tokyo, entire elevated walkway systems connect train stations, office buildings, shopping centers, and residential towers without ever requiring you to descend to street level. These aren't just skywalks over a single intersection. They're kilometers of connected climate-controlled pathways with wayfinding signage, seating areas, and retail integrated directly into the route. Osaka's Umeda district has an underground and elevated network so extensive you can walk for over a kilometer in any direction without seeing daylight or crossing a single road. The pathways are wide, well-lit, and accessible, with ramps and elevators at every level change. They're designed not as isolated bridges but as primary circulation routes, which means they're maintained and populated at all hours. During rain or summer heat, these networks become the default walking routes and street-level sidewalks become secondary. Most cities have a few skywalks that feel like afterthoughts, narrow, and disconnected. Japan built parallel pedestrian cities where walking is faster, safer, and more comfortable than it would ever be at ground level. It's the kind of infrastructure investment that requires thinking about pedestrian movement as a primary transportation mode, not something that happens in leftover space between car lanes. Number 9. Train station layouts designed around passenger flow simulation. Japanese train stations are designed using pedestrian flow simulation software that models how thousands of people move through space during peak hours. Platform widths, stairwell positions, ticket gate quantities, and even pillar placements are optimized to prevent bottlenecks. At major stations, you'll notice staircases are extra wide at the bottom and top where crowding is worst, and narrower in the middle where flow is steady. Some stations have express lanes and local lanes on stairs, with signage encouraging faster walkers to use one side. Platforms are designed so that exits are positioned exactly where crowds naturally distribute themselves along train car doors, preventing crush zones. When stations are remodeled, temporary barriers and route changes are tested for weeks before becoming permanent, with staff observing flow and making adjustments. The result is that even stations handling hundreds of thousands of passengers daily feel navigable and surprisingly calm. Most countries design stations based on architectural aesthetics or space availability, and then wonder why everyone's always stuck in choke points. Japan treats pedestrian flow like water engineering, using physics and data to create paths of least resistance. It's not visible design, which is exactly why it works so well. You don't notice the design. You just notice that somehow, despite the crowds, you're always moving. Number 10. Polite queue culture reinforced by physical infrastructure. Japanese queue culture is world famous, but it's not just social politeness. It's physically reinforced by painted lines, numbered zones, and barrier systems. At bus stops, painted lines show exactly where to form a queue, and people wait in perfect single file even if there's no shelter or barrier. At train platforms, the footprints and floor markings we discussed earlier create visual cue systems that make orderly boarding feel natural rather than forced. At ticket machines, colored floor tiles or printed guides show where to wait if someone's already using the machine. At escalators, people stand on one side and walk on the other, and this convention is supported by posted signage and consistent enforcement. Even in crowds waiting for event venues to open, staff place cones or ropes to guide queue formation hours before doors open, and people adhere to the system because the infrastructure makes it clear what's expected. The queues are rarely enforced by authority figures. They're self-sustaining because the infrastructure creates visual cues that make orderly behavior the default. In most countries, queues are theoretical concepts that collapse into shapeless scrums the moment resources are limited. Japan built infrastructure that shapes human behavior without requiring rules or enforcement. The lines on the ground aren't laws, they're just very strong suggestions that everyone follows because the system works, and because breaking it would mean opposing both infrastructure and social expectation. It's soft architecture that produces hard results. Number 11. Priority seating systems that are respected without enforcement. On every Japanese train, certain seats near doors are designated priority seating for elderly, pregnant, injured, or disabled passengers. These seats are marked with different colored upholstery, clear signage above, and often decals on windows. The areas around priority seats are also designated as spaces where phone use should be minimized, and where passengers should turn off phones near people with pacemakers, indicated by posted signs and regular announcements. Compliance is near universal not because of penalties but because of cultural respect, and because the infrastructure makes the designation so visually clear that ignoring it would require deliberate choice. During crowded trains, non-priority passengers will stand rather than sit in those seats if anyone who qualifies is nearby. Priority seating isn't a suggestion, it's a built-in space allocation system that's respected as physical infrastructure rather than a courtesy. Other countries have priority seating too, but enforcement is inconsistent and seats are often occupied by people who don't need them. Japan's version works because the cultural and physical infrastructure align. The seats look different, so there's no ambiguity. The expectation is universal, so there's no excuse. And the result is that people who need seats can actually rely on getting them, which transforms public transit accessibility from theoretical to functional. Number 12, underground walkways that double as flood control systems. In cities like Tokyo, extensive underground pedestrian passages aren't just for convenience, they're part of urban flood management. These passages are designed with drainage systems, floodgates, and pump stations that activate during heavy rain. The walkways are slightly graded to direct water toward collection points. Flood doors can seal sections if water levels rise. The design allows the tunnels to temporarily hold overflow water, reducing surface flooding, while still being safe for pedestrians because sensor systems and emergency protocols evacuate people before danger. Some underground networks connect directly to massive cisterns and diversion tunnels that protect the city during typhoons. The pedestrian infrastructure is multifunctional, serving daily commuter needs and disaster prevention simultaneously. Most cities treat pedestrian infrastructure and flood control as separate systems. Japan integrated them, creating pathways that serve people every single day and save lives during emergencies. It's the kind of dual-purpose design that only happens when infrastructure planning considers both routine use and crisis scenarios as equally important. Number 13. Smart crosswalks that detect pedestrians and adjust signal timing. In several Japanese cities, crosswalks are equipped with sensors that detect when pedestrians are waiting. If someone's waiting, the pedestrian signal phase is prioritized or extended. If no one's waiting, the system skips the pedestrian phase and keeps vehicle traffic moving, reducing unnecessary delays. Some systems use infrared sensors mounted on signal poles. Others use pressure-sensitive pads embedded in sidewalk waiting areas. The technology isn't flashy, but the impact is measurable: shorter wait times for pedestrians, reduced idling emissions from cars, and overall improved intersection efficiency. The system also adjusts for crowd size. If sensors detect a large group waiting, the crossing phase is extended to ensure everyone has time to cross safely. Elderly pedestrians can press a button that extends the crossing time by several seconds, and the system visually indicates the extension so other pedestrians understand why the light timing is different. In most places, crosswalk signals operate on fixed timers that ignore actual pedestrian presence, which means you're standing there waiting through empty crossing phases while cars sit idle waiting through pedestrian phases no one's using. Japan just added sensors and made the system context-aware. Simple upgrade, massive efficiency gain, and it's been standard in many areas for over a decade, while the rest of the world is still running on 1970s timer logic. Number 14. Station lighting designed to prevent suicides and improve mood. At train platforms known for high suicide rates, Japanese rail companies installed blue LED lights. Studies found that blue lighting reduced platform suicides by 84% at certain stations. The reason isn't entirely clear, but theories include the calming psychological effect of blue light and increased visibility that makes people feel observed. Beyond suicide prevention, station lighting is designed using color temperature research. Cooler blue-white lights are used in high-traffic areas to increase alertness and energy. Warmer yellow-white lights are used in waiting areas and seating zones to create calm. Underground stations have lighting that mimics natural daylight cycles, shifting color temperature throughout the day to reduce the psychological strain of being underground for extended periods. The lighting isn't just functional, it's therapeutic, treating the station environment as a space where emotional well-being matters as much as navigation. Most transit systems use whatever fluorescent tubes are cheapest and brightest. Japan studied how lighting affects mental state and used that research to design environments that reduce crisis and improve daily experience. It's infrastructure that acknowledges people aren't just bodies moving through space, they're minds that respond to environmental cues, and those cues can be designed to help. Number 15. Manhole covers designed specifically for pedestrian safety and traction. Japanese manhole covers aren't just functional, they're engineered for pedestrian interaction. The raised patterns on covers serve multiple purposes. They provide slip resistance even when wet, directing water into grooves and maintaining traction. The patterns are also designed to be visually interesting, with many municipalities creating custom designs featuring local landmarks, history, or culture. These aren't decorative afterthoughts, they're practical art. The covers are made from ductile iron with precise surface treatments that resist wear from foot traffic and vehicle weight. The non-slip textures are tested for performance in rain, snow, and ice. In areas with heavy pedestrian traffic, covers are installed perfectly flush with surrounding pavement to eliminate tripping hazards. The attention to detail extends to sound. Covers are seated in frames with rubber gaskets that prevent the loud clanking noise that happens when metal covers shift under weight. Walking down a Japanese street, manholes are silent, flush, slip-resistant, and sometimes beautiful. Most countries treat manhole covers as purely utilitarian objects that become skating rinks when wet and make horrible noise when cars drive over them. Japan engineered them as pedestrian infrastructure and decided that if they're going to be everywhere underfoot, they should be safe, quiet, and maybe even worth noticing. It's that philosophy in miniature. Infrastructure doesn't have to be ugly or ignored just because it's functional. Why not make it better? If you want to see more ways Japan has quietly perfected things the rest of the world hasn't bothered to fix, hit like and subscribe, and check out the video on your screen right now. The truth is, every single thing on this list started the same way. Someone noticed a problem and refused to accept that it was unsolvable. A blind person struggling to navigate a station. A crowd crushing into a bottleneck. A pedestrian hit by a turning car. Instead of shrugging and calling it part of urban life, Japanese designers asked, what if we could eliminate this entirely? And then they actually did the work to figure out how. That's the real lesson here. It's not that Japan has access to magic or unlimited budgets. It's that they treat pedestrian safety and comfort as non-negotiable design requirements, not afterthoughts. They measure success not by how many cars move per hour, but by how many people can move safely, comfortably, and efficiently together. They spend time studying how people actually move through space. They test solutions, they refine them, they maintain them, they iterate based on what they learn. When you zoom out and look at all 15 of these systems together, you realize they're not separate innovations. They're pieces of a coherent philosophy that prioritizes people. Tactile paving blocks aren't just for blind pedestrians. They help everyone navigate when it's dark or crowded or they're distracted. Priority seating isn't just for elderly people. It signals to the entire society that some people need help and that providing it is normal. Pedestrian scrambles aren't just safer than traditional crossings. They're also faster and actually improve overall traffic flow. Every solution solves multiple problems simultaneously because it was designed with care and attention rather than as a quick fix. And the beautiful part is that none of this requires technology that doesn't exist. Some of it just requires thoughtfulness, some requires engineering precision, some requires cultural commitment, but it's all achievable. Every city in the world could implement these systems. The only thing stopping them is deciding that pedestrians matter enough to actually try. That decision has to come from somewhere. It comes from you valuing it enough to demand it, from planners brave enough to prioritize it, from communities willing to support it. Thank you so much for watching this. If you learned something new about how thoughtful design can transform entire cities, please hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps us keep making videos like this. And if you want to dive deeper into how other countries are solving problems differently, there's a great video waiting for you right now.